I stood in my tuxedo watching Jack dance with his new bride, pride swelling in my chest. For 45 years, I poured my blood and sweat into our family farm, building it acre by acre. My Sarah would have been so proud of our boy. Then Jack's smile turned cold as he approached me, champagne glass raised high. The music faded as 200 guests fell silent. My son grabbed my arm, fingers digging into my flesh. "Old man," he roared, loud enough for everyone to hear, "hand over the farm keys. Today." The day had started with such promise. I woke before dawn, a lifetime habit from decades of farm work, even though today was special. My son Jack was getting married. I stood at my bedroom window, watching the sunrise cast golden light across my fields. Those 300 acres represented my life's work, transformed from the struggling 40-acre plot my parents left me when they died in that car accident. I was only 19 then, barely a man, with nothing but determination and their old tractor. As I adjusted my bow tie in the mirror, I couldn't help thinking how Sarah would have loved to see this day. She always said Jack had my stubbornness and her charm, a combination she claimed would take him far in life. We lost her to cancer when Jack was 16, and her last whispered request was that I keep the farm in the family. "Promise me, Kent," she had said, holding my hand with what little strength remained. "The land is our legacy." I promised her, and I meant it. But I also promised myself I'd give Jack opportunities I never had. Private high school after Sarah passed, college education at a top business school, freedom to find his own path, even when that path led away from the farm to a corporate job in the city. I never wanted to be the kind of father who chained his son to his own dreams. The wedding venue was an expensive country club overlooking a lake. I paid for everything, despite Jack's initial protests. "Dad, Allison's family should contribute," he had said during planning. "Your mother would have wanted this," I replied simply, and that ended the discussion. The ceremony was beautiful. Since Allison's father passed away years ago, she asked me to walk her down the aisle. It felt right, this symbolic joining of our families. She looked radiant, and Jack looked happier than I'd seen him in years. Standing there beside him as best man, I felt a fullness in my heart that had been missing since Sarah died. During the cocktail hour, I noticed Jack drinking more heavily than usual. He seemed nervous, checking his phone constantly between greeting guests. I chalked it up to wedding jitters and circulated among our guests, many of whom were local farmers who'd known our family for generations. Dinner was elegant, the toasts heartfelt. When it was Jack's turn to speak, he started beautifully, thanking everyone for coming and speaking lovingly about Allison. But then his tone shifted. "Today marks not just my marriage, but a new beginning for our family," he said, his gaze fixed on me rather than his bride. "It's time for taking control of the family legacy, starting tonight." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. The farmers at my table exchanged glances. Jack's words felt rehearsed, practiced, not the spontaneous happiness of a groom. I smiled through it, telling myself I was overreacting. This was his day, after all. But as Jack raised his glass for the final toast, his eyes held something I'd never seen before. Something calculating. Something cold. "To new beginnings," he said, never breaking eye contact with me. "And to the future of the Wilson family farm." After dinner, the band started playing, and guests filled the dance floor. I was making my way to the bar when Ted Williams, who owned the feed store in town, clapped me on the back. "So, retirement at last. What are your plans, Kent? Fishing? Travel?" I stared at him, confused. "Retirement? I'm not retiring." Ted's smile faltered. But Jack said, "Well, he mentioned you were handing over the reins. Said he had big plans for the property." Before I could respond, Jack's college roommate, Dave, appeared, whiskey in hand. "Mr. Wilson, great to finally meet you. Jack hasn't stopped talking about developing the old property. Said it's going to change everything for you guys." My stomach tightened. Developing? The farm wasn't a development opportunity. It was a working farm that supported 4 families besides my own, growing organic produce for markets across 3 counties. Throughout the evening, More puzzling comments came my way. Congratulations on my new chapter. Questions about my retirement plans. A real estate agent I'd never met handed me her card with a wink, saying, "When you're ready to find that beach house, call me." Across the room, I spotted Jack deep in conversation with three men in expensive suits who definitely weren't local. One was gesturing enthusiastically, sketching something in the air that looked like building outlines. I tried several times to speak with Jack privately, but he was always surrounded by people or would say, "Later, Dad. Let's just enjoy the party." His phone kept buzzing, and each time he checked it, his expression grew more tense. Near the dessert table, I overheard an argument between Allison and her mother. "You're rushing into this marriage," her mother hissed. "6 months isn't long enough to know someone." "Mom, drop it." "It's done," Allison replied, her voice strained. When she noticed me nearby, she plastered on a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. Frank Cooper and his son approached me next. Their small farm adjoined mine, and we'd shared equipment and labor for 20 years. "Kent, tell me straight," Frank said quietly. "Are you really selling to developers? Because if those fields go, the water runoff will flood my lower 40 acres. "Frank, I don't know what you're talking about," I assured him. "The farm stays a farm. I promised Sarah." Frank looked relieved but confused. "Then what was Jack telling the zoning commissioner last week?" "They were walking your north boundary line with surveying equipment." My mind reeled. Jack hadn't mentioned any visit to the farm, let alone bringing zoning officials. Whatever was happening, I was clearly the last to know. I watched my son circulate among his city friends, laughing too loudly, drinking too much, checking his phone with increasing frequency. This wasn't the boy I raised. Something was very wrong. The band announced the cake cutting, drawing everyone's attention. Jack and Allison performed the ritual perfectly, feeding each other with practiced smiles. Then Jack clinked his glass for silence. "While I have everyone's attention," he announced, voice carrying across the ballroom, "I want to share some exciting news. As most of you know, my father has worked incredibly hard his entire life building our family farm." Appreciative murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jack raised his glass toward me. "Dad's retirement gift to us is the farm itself. We're taking over tomorrow." His city friends erupted in cheers. The local farmers stood stone-faced. I felt as though I'd been punched in the stomach. Retirement gift? Taking over tomorrow? This was the first I'd heard of it. As guests resumed dancing, I saw Jack whisper something to Allison. She frowned and shook her head slightly. He grabbed her elbow, his smile fixed but his grip visibly tight, and guided her toward a group of his friends. I had to end this charade. Now, I caught up with Jack near the restrooms, away from the main celebration. "We need to talk. Now." He sighed dramatically. "Can't it wait until tomorrow, Dad?" "No." I kept my voice low, but firm. "What's this about you taking over the farm? We never discussed this." Jack leaned against the wall, his perfect composure slipping. "It's time, Dad. You're too old for this. 70 next month. Don't you want to enjoy your golden years?" "By doing what? Watching 3 generations of work get bulldozed for condos?" I countered. "The farm supports 4 families besides ours. What happens to them?" "That's business," Jack said dismissively. "Look, I've already got everything arranged. The paperwork just needs your signature." I stared at my son, hardly recognizing him. "What paperwork?" "Jack, what have you done?" He straightened his jacket, not meeting my eyes. "Nothing that wasn't inevitable anyway. You're being stubborn about this. The land is worth millions developed. It's not for sale. Not now, not ever." I stepped closer. "I promised your mother." Jack's face hardened. "Mom's been gone 14 years. This isn't about her promises. It's about my future, my life." Before I could respond, Jack's best man Scott appeared, clearly intoxicated. He threw an arm around Jack's shoulders. "There he is, the man with the plan." He turned to me grinning. "Mr. Wilson, your boy's a financial genius. Did he tell you how he's going to clear his debts and come out ahead? Smart move with the farm, turning that liability into liquid assets." Jack shoved Scott away. "Shut up, man. Not now. My blood ran cold. Debts? What debts? Scott looked confused. The gambling. The loans. You know. He trailed off, seeing Jack's expression. Oh shit, he doesn't know? Get lost, Scott, Jack snarled. As Scott stumbled away, I grabbed Jack's arm. What gambling? What loans? Jack yanked free. It's under control. Is that why you lost your job at the investment firm? The words left my mouth before I fully processed them, a conclusion drawn from 100 small clues I'd been ignoring. Jack's face confirmed it before he could deny anything. How did you know? I didn't. Not until right now. I felt sick. When? 3 months ago. Jack ran a hand through his hair. It's temporary. I've got opportunities lined up. Like selling my farm out from under me? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Jack's expression turned ugly. Your farm? I'm the only heir. It's my birthright. Birthright comes with responsibility, son. Something you clearly don't understand. I took a deep breath. This wedding, you couldn't afford it, could you? That's why you let me pay. You wanted to pay, Jack countered defensively, because you led me to believe you and Allison were starting your lives together honestly. I looked around the opulent venue. This whole thing is a lie, isn't it? As if summoned by our raised voices, Bill Taylor, president of the local bank and an old friend, approached cautiously. Everything all right here, gentlemen? Jack forced a smile. Just a little father-son chat. Nothing to worry about. Bill looked unconvinced. Kent, could I have a word? Privately? Jack stalked off toward the bar, while Bill led me to a quiet corner. I wasn't going to do this tonight, Bill began uncomfortably, but hearing your conversation, Kent. Jack tried to take out a loan against the farm last month. Brought in paperwork with what appeared to be your signature. My knees nearly buckled. What? I knew something was off. The signature didn't look right, and you've banked with us 40 years without ever using the property as collateral. Bill lowered his voice further. I held off processing it, called your lawyer instead. The documents were forgeries. The room seemed to tilt. My son had attempted to commit fraud using my farm as collateral. There's more, Bill continued reluctantly. 2 men came asking about Jack's accounts last week. Not local. Said they were business associates. But they didn't seem the business type, if you catch my meaning. I looked across the room where Jack was now throwing back another drink, surrounded by his city friends. Beyond him, I noticed 2 unfamiliar men in dark suits, watching from near the exit. Not participating in the celebration, just watching. How bad is it, Bill? The truth. Bill hesitated. From what I've gathered, 6 figures bad. Maybe worse. I thanked him and made my way back to the reception, my mind racing. As I passed the coat check, I spotted Jack's wedding day luggage in the adjacent room. His garment bag lay open, and something caught my eye. A folder with Wilson Farm Redevelopment printed on the tab. I shouldn't have looked. It was his private paperwork. But the farm was my life, and if he was planning something, the folder contained architectural drawings for 200 luxury homes where my fields now stood, purchase agreements with prospective buyers, and, most devastating, receipts for farm equipment and livestock sold over the past month, equipment and animals that were supposedly still in my barn. I stood there, documents trembling in my hands, when the band announced the father-son dance. Mechanically, I returned the folder and joined Jack on the dance floor. As we moved awkwardly to the music, I searched his face for any trace of the boy I raised. Were you ever going to tell me? I asked quietly. Or just present me with a fait accompli? You wouldn't understand, he muttered. You're stuck in the past, and you've sold our future. The music swelled, masking my words to all but him. I know about the equipment sales, the development plans, the forged loan documents. Jack missed a step, nearly stumbling. His face drained of color, then flushed with anger. You had no right to go through my things. And you had no right to sell what isn't yours, I countered. The dance ended. Guests applauded, unaware of the tension between us. Jack raised his champagne glass, signaling for attention. I'd like to make another toast, he announced, his voice carrying across the now quiet room. To my father, Kent Wilson, who built our family legacy from nothing. Guests murmured appreciatively. I stood frozen, uncertain what was coming. Dad, Jack continued, turning to face me directly, it's time to pass the torch. Hand over the farm keys today, in front of all these witnesses. Let's make it official. 200 pairs of eyes turned to me. The silence was absolute. No, I said simply. Jack's smile became a grimace. Don't be difficult, old man. It's time. The farm isn't for sale or transfer. Not today, not tomorrow. Jack grabbed my arm, his fingers digging painfully into my flesh. His voice dropped to a growl. I need those keys today. I've got people waiting on this. The answer is no, I repeated, loud enough for everyone to hear. Something snapped in Jack's eyes. His hand shot out, the slap connecting with my cheek with such force that my head rocked back. The sound echoed through the silent room. Someone gasped. The band stopped playing mid-note. My son had just assaulted me, in front of 200 wedding guests. For several heartbeats, no one moved. My cheek burned with the imprint of Jack's hand. Somewhere in the frozen tableau, a glass shattered on the floor. Allison rushed forward first. Jack, stop this. 2 security guards moved toward us, but I held up my hand to stop them. This was a family matter, at least for now. Jack's face was contorted with a rage I'd never witnessed before. You stubborn old fool. You're holding me back, just like you always have. I gave you everything, I said quietly. Education, opportunities, freedom, everything except what matters, Jack shouted. Do you know what that land is worth? Millions. But you'd rather grow carrots and play farmer than set up your only son. People began backing away, creating space around our family drama. Allison stood halfway between us, tears streaming down her face. Jack, please, she begged. Not like this. He ignored her, focused entirely on me. I've got people waiting on this deal, Dad. People you don't want to disappoint. My gaze drifted to the 2 men in dark suits who had moved closer, watching the confrontation with cold interest. Loan sharks, I asked softly. Is that who you're in debt to? Jack's eyes widened slightly. You don't know what you're talking about. Bill Taylor approached cautiously. Kent, maybe we should step outside, cool down a bit. Stay out of this, Bill, Jack snapped. Bill ignored him, speaking directly to me. Kent, there's something you should know. Jack tried to access your accounts last week, said he had power of attorney. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Jack's face reddened further. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? I asked, the pieces falling into place. The rushed wedding, the secret meetings. Was any of this real, or just a smokescreen to get access to the farm? Allison's mother pushed forward. What is he talking about, Jack? What have you done? Jack backed up, looking hunted. Nothing. Dad's confused. He's getting old, imagining things. I saw the development plans, I said evenly. 200 homes where our fields stand now. Purchase agreements already signed. Gasps and murmurs rose from the local guests who understood what this meant. You sold deposits on land you don't own? Bill asked incredulously. Jack's expression flitted between defiance and panic. It's my inheritance. Mine. Allison grabbed his arm. You promised we'd live on the farm, Jack. You said we'd restore the old house. That's why I agreed to move forward so quickly with the wedding. Her mother stepped forward. Allison, what is he talking about? Allison's voice shook. Mom, I thought. Jack said his father was giving us the farm as a wedding present, that we'd live there while Jack commuted to his investment job. Investment job he lost 3 months ago, I added quietly. The color drained from Allison's face. What? Ask him about the gambling debts, I suggested. Ask him who those men by the door are waiting for. All eyes turned to the dark-suited strangers, who stiffened under the sudden attention. You don't understand, Jack said desperately. I just need time. The development deal solves everything. Except it's not your deal to make, I replied. The farm isn't yours, Jack. Not yet. And after today, I'm not sure it ever will be. The statement hung in the air between us. Jack's face shifted from shock to fury. "You can't do that. You promised Mom." "I promised her the farm would stay in the family. I never promised it would go to someone who'd destroy everything we built." The collective intake of breath from the onlookers was audible. I hadn't meant to air our dirty laundry so publicly, but Jack had forced my hand. "I'm going home," I said finally. "We'll discuss this when you're sober." "No." Jack lunged forward, grabbing my jacket. "You're signing the transfer papers tonight. I need this done before Monday." Security finally intervened, pulling Jack back. He struggled against their grip. "You're ruining everything," he shouted. "They'll kill me if I don't pay." The room fell deathly silent at this confession. The dark-suited men by the door exchanged glances and slipped out of the ballroom. I looked at my son, red-faced, disheveled, desperate, and felt my heart breaking. This wasn't just about the farm anymore. This was about Jack's very life. "I'm sorry," I said simply, and walked out. Several older farmers offered to follow me home, concerned for my safety, but I declined. I needed to be alone, to think. As I retrieved my coat, I noticed Jack's luggage again. Something compelled me to take one more look at that folder. What I found made my blood run cold. Receipts for tractors, irrigation equipment, even breeding stock. All sold in the past month, with deposits collected but delivery dates set for next week. Jack had already liquidated over $300,000 in farm assets he didn't own. I drove home in silence, the weight of discovery crushing my chest. The farmhouse was dark and empty when I arrived, a stark contrast to the morning's anticipation. I walked through each room, touching familiar objects, photographs, memories. In our bedroom, mine alone for 14 years now, I picked up Sarah's portrait from the nightstand. "What do I do?" I asked her silent image. "He's our son, but I don't recognize him anymore." As if in answer, my eyes fell on a photo beside Sarah's her brother Thomas in his judge's robes. Thomas, who had promised at Sarah's funeral, "If you ever need anything, Kent, I'm here. Family takes care of family." I had always been too proud to ask for help, too determined to handle problems on my own. But this was beyond me now. Jack needed intervention I couldn't provide alone. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I rarely used. "Thomas? It's Kent. I need your help. It's about Jack, and it's serious." After speaking with Thomas, I sat alone in the darkened living room, the grandfather clock ticking away the minutes. Each sound seemed amplified in the empty house, the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the old farmhouse settling, wind rustling through the oak trees outside the window. These were the sounds of my life, a soundtrack so familiar I rarely noticed them anymore. I thought about Jack as a boy, following me through these same fields, asking endless questions. "Why do we plant in rows, Dad? How do seeds know which way to grow? Can I drive the tractor today?" His curiosity had been boundless then, his connection to the land instinctive and natural. Somewhere along the way, that connection had been severed, replaced by something colder, more calculating. Had I done this? By pushing him toward college, toward opportunities beyond the farm, had I inadvertently taught him to see the land only as an asset to be leveraged? The question tormented me as I waited for Thomas to arrive. I walked out onto the porch, gazing across moonlit fields that stretched to the horizon. Each acre held stories: the North 40, where Sarah and I had picnicked as newlyweds; the west pasture where Jack had learned to ride his first bike; the old oak where we'd built his treehouse. To Jack, these were just coordinates on a development plan now. The sound of tires on gravel announced Thomas's arrival. He stepped out of his car, tall and distinguished even at 1 a.m, in hastily donned casual clothes. Sarah's features were evident in his face, the same determined jaw, the same kind eyes that could turn steely when crossed. "Kent." He embraced me briefly but firmly. "I came as soon as I could. I appreciate it. Sorry to drag you out in the middle of the night." Thomas waved away the apology. "Family comes first, always. Let's go inside and you can tell me everything." Over coffee at the kitchen table, I laid out the whole sordid story: Jack's secret financial dealings, the development plans, the attempted fraud, The confrontation at the wedding. Thomas listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly grave. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. "I was afraid something like this might happen," he finally said. I stared at him. "You knew?" Thomas sighed heavily. "Not specifics, but I've been concerned about Jack's financial activities for months now. There were rumors in certain circles, talk of excessive gambling, questionable associates. I've been making some discreet inquiries. Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted proof before worrying you." Thomas rubbed his temples. "The truth is, Kent, Jack's problems go deeper than you know. My contacts in the Financial Crimes Unit have had his name come up in connection with some gambling syndicates. Nothing prosecutable yet, but enough to raise red flags." My stomach dropped. "Gambling syndicates? Are you talking about organized crime? Not The Godfather, if that's what you're thinking. But these aren't people you want to owe money to." Thomas leaned forward. "How much do you think he owes?" Bill mentioned 6 figures. From what I saw in those documents, Jack's already collected deposits on equipment sales and development plans, totaling at least $300,000. Thomas whistled low. "And the farm itself?" "The development offer was $4.5 million. But Thomas, the farm isn't for sale. Never has been." "I know." Thomas placed a hand on my shoulder. "And we're going to make sure it stays that way. But first, we need to deal with the immediate problem. Jack," I said quietly. "Jack," Thomas agreed. "And whoever he's gotten himself involved with, I'm going to make some calls. We need to be at that hotel before Jack and his new wife leave for their honeymoon. What do you think he'll do when he sees us?" Thomas's expression was grim. "Based on what you've told me? Panic. But that might be exactly what we need." As Thomas made calls, I found myself in Jack's old bedroom, preserved much as he'd left it for college 12 years ago. Sports trophies, science fair ribbons, his first 4-H prize for a calf he'd raised himself. Where had that boy gone? How had he turned into the desperate, angry man who'd struck his own father at his wedding? By dawn, Thomas had assembled what he called a response team. His clerk had prepared emergency injunctions. His contacts at the county prosecutor's office and banking commission were alerted. A forensic accountant friend was reviewing the documents I'd described. "We don't have legal grounds to stop him from leaving on his honeymoon," Thomas explained as we drove back toward the hotel. "But we do have enough to freeze any transactions involving the farm or its assets, and to begin formal investigations into the fraud attempts." "I don't want Jack to go to prison," I said quietly. Thomas glanced at me. "That might not be entirely up to you, Kent. If he's committed the kinds of fraud I suspect, there could be criminal charges regardless of your wishes. But let's focus on stopping further damage first." As we pulled into the hotel parking lot, I spotted Jack's new sports car still parked near the entrance. At least they hadn't left yet. "Remember," Thomas said as we walked toward the lobby, "let me do most of the talking. And Kent, be prepared. This won't be pretty." I nodded, steeling myself for what was to come. My son had forced this confrontation. Now we would all have to face the consequences. The hotel lobby was quiet, the remnants of wedding decorations being dismantled by staff. A few bleary-eyed guests milled about, collecting room keys and complimentary coffee. Thomas approached the front desk with the authoritative bearing that had served him well in his 30 years on the bench. "We need to speak with Jack Wilson immediately. It's an urgent family matter." The desk clerk hesitated. "The newlyweds have requested privacy until checkout." "Perhaps I could take a message?" Thomas leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I'm Judge Thomas Grayson. This is a legal matter that cannot wait. Please call their room now." Something in Thomas's tone convinced the clerk, who quickly picked up the phone. After a brief conversation, she hung up. "Mr. Wilson says he's packing and can't be disturbed. Tell him his father and uncle are here regarding the farm transfer, and if he doesn't come down immediately, we'll come up," Thomas replied. The clerk made the call, listened, then said, "Room 720. He'll see you there." As we rode the elevator up, I tried to prepare myself. What would I say to Jack after last night? How could we possibly repair this breach? Thomas seemed to read my thoughts. Stay firm, Kent. Jack needs boundaries now more than ever. The door to room 720 was slightly ajar when we arrived. Thomas knocked anyway. Jack? It's Thomas and your father. We heard hurried movements inside. Then Jack appeared at the door. He looked terrible, unshaven, bloodshot eyes, still in his rumpled tuxedo pants and undershirt. Behind him, Allison sat on the edge of the bed, her elegant wedding gown replaced by jeans and a sweatshirt, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "What do you want?" Jack demanded, not inviting us in. "We need to talk," I said. "May we come in? There's nothing to discuss. You made yourself clear last night." Despite his defiant words, Jack's voice held a tremor. Thomas stepped forward. "This isn't a request, Jack. Either we talk privately or we can continue this conversation at the county courthouse." Jack reluctantly backed away, allowing us to enter. The hotel suite was in disarray, luggage open on the floor, clothes strewn about. "Going somewhere in a hurry?" Thomas asked mildly. "Our honeymoon." Street Thomas. Jack crossed his arms defensively. At least that was the plan before Dad ruined everything. "I ruined everything?" I echoed in disbelief. "You humiliated me in front of everyone," Jack snapped. "Do you know what people are saying? The wedding's a laughingstock." "Jack," Allison interjected quietly. "That's not fair." Jack rounded on her. "Whose side are you on?" "There shouldn't be sides," she replied. "This is your family." Thomas cleared his throat. "Jack, I've spent the night reviewing the situation with your father. I've also spoken with several officials who are very interested in your recent financial activities." Jack's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" "The fraudulent loan applications with your father's forged signature," Thomas said calmly. "The sale of farm equipment you don't own. The collection of deposits for development on land that isn't yours to sell. Should I continue?" Jack swayed slightly, grabbing the back of a chair for support. "You can't prove any of that. I don't need to prove it in this room." Thomas pulled out his phone. "But the county prosecutor, the banking commission, and the state attorney general's office are all quite interested in doing exactly that, formally, with warrants." Allison stood up. "Jack, what is he talking about?" Before Jack could answer, a sharp knock came at the door. Thomas opened it to reveal two men in suits, not the dark-suited watchers from the wedding, but different men with the unmistakable bearing of law enforcement. "Judge Grayson?" one asked. "You requested our presence." "Yes, come in. This is my nephew, Jack Wilson." The men entered, nodding curtly to Jack, who had gone completely pale. "These gentlemen are from the Financial Crimes Unit," Thomas explained to the room. "I've asked them to be present for this discussion." "This is harassment," Jack protested weakly. "No, it's intervention," Thomas corrected. "Kent, show them the documents." I pulled out the folder I'd taken from Jack's luggage, a decision I now knew had been necessary, if painful. The officers began reviewing the contents, their expressions growing increasingly serious. "Mr. Wilson," one finally said to Jack, "these equipment sales receipts? You collected deposits on items you don't own?" "It's a family business," Jack said desperately. "I have verbal authorization." I shook my head. "No, you don't." Another knock at the door. This time it was Bill Taylor from the bank, accompanied by a woman in a business suit who introduced herself as a representative from the State Banking Commission. Jack's composure completely collapsed. He sank into a chair, head in his hands. "This is insane. All of it." "No, son," I said quietly. "What's insane is thinking you could sell off a farm that's been in our family for 3 generations without consequences." The room fell silent for a moment, broken only by Jack's ragged breathing. Then 2 more figures appeared at the open doorway. The dark-suited men from the wedding. "Wilson," one said flatly, "we need to talk about our arrangement." The law enforcement officers immediately tensed, hands moving instinctively toward their weapons. "Gentlemen," Thomas said smoothly, "I don't believe you were invited to this meeting." "We have business with Wilson," the man insisted. "Private business." "Would that business involve gambling debts?" Thomas asked. "Because if so, I think these officers would be very interested to hear the details. The two men exchanged glances, clearly reassessing the situation. The lead officer stepped forward, badge now visible. Perhaps you gentlemen would like to join us down at the station to discuss your private business with Mr. Wilson? The dark-suited men backed away. We'll be in touch, one said to Jack before they disappeared down the hallway. Allison had moved to the far corner of the room, watching the scene unfold with increasing horror. Jack, what have you done? Jack looked up, his face a mask of desperation. I was trying to fix things. The gambling started small, just poker nights with clients. Then sports betting. I thought I could win it back. How much do you owe? I asked. Jack swallowed hard. $450,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. Nearly $500,000 in gambling debts. And you thought selling the farm would solve this? I asked. The development deal would have cleared everything with plenty left over. Jack's voice cracked. I just needed you to sign. Thomas shook his head. And the equipment sales? The forged loan documents? Buying time, Jack admitted. Keeping them off my back until the development went through. The banking commission representative stepped forward. Mr. Wilson, we'll need formal statements regarding the attempted fraud. There will be an investigation. Jack seemed to shrink before my eyes. The bravado of last night completely evaporated. For the first time, I saw him clearly, not as the confident man he pretended to be, but as someone drowning, clutching at anything that might save him, even if it meant dragging others down too. Allison approached slowly, tears streaming down her face. Were you ever going to tell me the truth? About any of this? Jack couldn't meet her eyes. I was going to fix it before you ever needed to know. That's not how marriage works, she said quietly. I took a deep breath. Jack, we can't undo what you've done, but we can try to limit the damage. Thomas nodded. Kent and I have discussed this. He's not pressing charges for the forgeries, though that decision may be revisited depending on your cooperation. What do you want me to do? Jack asked hollowly. First, you'll sign statements admitting to everything, Thomas said. No more lies, no more hiding. Second, you'll make arrangements to return every cent of the deposits you collected under false pretenses. Third, you'll seek professional help for the gambling addiction. And what about the people I owe money to? Jack asked, glancing toward the door where his creditors had stood. That's being addressed separately, Thomas assured him. But it's important you understand something, Jack. Your father could have walked away, left you to face this alone. Jack finally looked up at me, his expression a mixture of shame and disbelief. Instead, Thomas continued, he's trying to save you from yourself, even after what happened last night. Why? Jack asked me directly. After what I did, what I tried to do, why would you help me? I moved to stand before my son, because despite everything, you're still my boy. And because I made a promise to your mother about family taking care of family. But Jack, you need to know something. What? I met with my lawyer last month when I first suspected something was wrong. The farm is now in an irrevocable trust with specific conditions. It must remain a working farm for a minimum of 20 years. The trust has an oversight board that includes your Uncle Thomas. No development, no sales, no transfers without unanimous board approval. Jack's mouth opened and closed silently. It was never about keeping the farm from you, I explained gently. It was about protecting our legacy from developers, from creditors, and yes, from your worst impulses. Someday, it can still be yours, but only if you prove yourself worthy of it. For the first time that day, something like relief crossed Jack's features. Then, to my astonishment, he began to shake silent tremors at first, then heaving sobs that seemed to come from the depths of his being. I reached out tentatively and placed my hand on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. I've made such a mess, he whispered. I don't know how to fix this. One step at a time, I told him. Starting now. 6 months later, I stood at the edge of the East Field watching the new irrigation system being installed. Dean Matthews, the young farm manager I'd hired, was directing the work with a competence that belied his 26 years. Should be operational by next week, Mr. Wilson, he called over to me. It's Kent, I reminded him, not for the first time. Dean grinned. Yes, sir. Mr. Kent. I chuckled. Some battles weren't worth fighting. Besides, I liked the kid. Fresh, out of agricultural college, with innovative ideas, but respectful of traditional farming wisdom, exactly what the farm needed for its next chapter. I'd moved into the smaller guest house on the property, leaving the main farmhouse empty for now. It was strange at first, like being demoted in my own life, but the simplicity suited me. Without the echoing emptiness of the big house, my evenings were more peaceful. The sound of tires on gravel announced visitors. I recognized Jack's sedan, more modest than the sports car he'd been forced to sell to help pay his debts. He parked and got out, dressed in jeans and a work shirt, a far cry from the expensive suits he'd once favored. Morning, Dad, he called, walking over. Dean getting the irrigation set up? Should be running by next week, I confirmed. Jack nodded, surveying the fields with new eyes. In the months since what we now called the wedding incident, my son had changed in ways I never expected. After 90 days in a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction, he'd emerged, humbled but determined. The criminal charges had been reduced to misdemeanors in exchange for full restitution to the equipment buyers he'd deceived. He and Allison were living in a modest city apartment while he worked to rebuild his life, and gradually, our relationship. Allison's bringing lunch around noon, Jack said. Her mother's coming too. They want to see the new greenhouse. That was another surprise. Allison had not only stayed with Jack through the worst of it but had discovered an unexpected passion for horticulture. Her weekly visits to the farm had started as supportive gestures for Jack, but evolved into genuine interest. How's the new job? I asked as we walked toward the equipment barn. Jack had found work at a financial literacy nonprofit, teaching budgeting skills to at-risk youth, a position Thomas had helped arrange. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Going well. The kids respond better than I expected. Guess they can tell I know what I'm talking about when it comes to financial mistakes. His honesty about his failures was still new, refreshing after years of image management and pretense. Dean joined us, tablet in hand. Jack, those organic certification forms you helped with last week came through. We're officially transitioning to certified organic for the West 80 acres. Jack's face lit up with genuine pride. That's great. The premium should offset the yield reduction during transition. I listened to them discuss soil amendments and certification requirements with a sense of wonderment. 6 months ago, Jack couldn't have told you the difference between organic and conventional farming. Now he was volunteering at the farm every weekend, absorbing knowledge like the curious boy he'd once been. Thomas arrived for our monthly trust board meeting around midday. These sessions, initially tense affairs focused on Jack's restitution payments and legal obligations, had gradually evolved into strategic planning for the farm's future. The payment plan is on schedule, Thomas reported as we sat around the kitchen table in the guest house. Another 18 months should clear the gambling debts completely. Jack nodded solemnly. I spoke with my sponsor about the settlement this morning. Still one day at a time, but it feels good to be making progress. And how are things with Allison? Thomas asked. A small smile crossed Jack's face. Better than I deserve. She's talking about taking some agricultural business courses at the community college. Really? I couldn't hide my surprise. She likes it here. Jack glanced out the window where Dean was showing Allison and her mother the new greenhouse. Says there's something honest about growing things. After lunch, I found Jack alone by the old oak tree that had held his childhood treehouse. Remember building this? I asked, joining him. You let me hammer in exactly 3 nails before taking over, Jack replied with a wry smile. Said I was murdering perfectly good lumber. We both laughed at the memory. Dad, Jack said after a moment, his tone turning serious. I need to say something I should have said months ago. I'm sorry. Not just for the wedding, but for everything before it. For seeing the farm as nothing but a cash cow. For trying to steal what you spent your life building. Jack, please let me finish. He took a deep breath. When Mom died, I think something broke in me. She was always the one who helped me see the value in this place beyond money. Without her, I lost sight of what matters. I placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling the solid presence of my son, not the arrogant stranger from the wedding, but the man he was becoming. Your mother would be proud of who you're becoming, I said softly. Not of what I did. No, I agreed. But of how you're making amends, of the hard work you're putting in. Second chances aren't guaranteed, Jack. You're making the most of yours. In the distance, Dean was leading Allison and her mother on a tour of the fields, gesturing enthusiastically toward the new organic section. Thomas had joined them, listening attentively, as Dean explained something about soil conservation. I had this all wrong, Jack said, watching them. I thought inheritance was about property getting the keys, the title, the assets. But that's not it at all, is it? What do you think it is? I asked. Jack considered for a moment. Values, knowledge, a way of seeing the world. The property is just the vehicle for passing those things along. I felt something tight in my chest loosen at his words. For the first time in years, perhaps since Sarah's death, I felt true hope for our family's future. Later that afternoon, as the autumn sun cast long shadows across the fields, Jack and Dean worked together repairing fence posts along the north boundary. Allison sat with me on the porch, her sketches for the farmhouse renovation spread between us. We're thinking maybe next summer, she said cautiously. If the trust board approves and Jack keeps making progress, I think that's reasonable, I agreed. The house has been empty long enough. The farm would never belong to Jack alone. The trust ensured it would remain a working farm regardless of who lived in the main house. But someday, if he continued on this path, he and Allison might become its stewards, not owners, but caretakers of a legacy larger than any of us. As the sun began to set, Jack joined us on the porch. Dean says we should expect the first frost next week. We'll need to finish the harvest on the north field. I nodded, watching my son's face as he gazed out over the land, not calculating its development value, but assessing its needs, its rhythms, its future. You know, I said quietly, your mother always said the land doesn't really belong to us. We belong to it. We're just passing through, taking care of it for those who come after. Jack's expression softened. She was right. About that and so many other things. As darkness fell, I thought about the journey of the past 6 months from that terrible wedding night to this moment of hard-won peace. The road hadn't been easy. There were still restitution payments to make, trust to rebuild, wounds to heal. But watching my son stand tall again, humbled but not broken, I knew we'd found our way back to what mattered. Some inheritances can't be measured in acres or dollars. The true legacy we leave behind is in the values we instill, the lessons we teach through both success and failure, and the love that remains even when everything else falls apart. I thought about that slap at the wedding that had seemed to shatter everything, and realized now it had broken something that needed breaking the facade of who we'd both been pretending to be. Sometimes, things need to break apart before they can be rebuilt stronger. Dad? Jack's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Thank you for not giving up on me when you had every reason to. Family doesn't give up on family, I replied simply. Your mother taught me that. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, I felt Sarah's presence more strongly than I had in years. Not gone, just waiting patiently for us to find our way back to what she'd always known was important. The farm would continue. Different, perhaps, than I'd imagined, but continuing all the same. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between enabling someone you love or holding them accountable? It's one of life's hardest challenges, knowing when to support unconditionally and when to establish boundaries. If this story touched you or reminded you of your own family experiences, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Every family has its struggles, and sometimes sharing them helps us all feel less alone. If you found value in this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more authentic stories about family, legacy, and redemption. Thank you for listening, and may you find wisdom in your own family journey, whatever form it takes.